Hi. It may be only two of us. Sometimes people join late, but we also stream to YouTube live, and that's where I think most people watch. So it's likely that there are going to be viewers on YouTube.
Hi. It may be only two of us. Sometimes people.
Okay. Sorry, the live stream was talking back to me. Okay, let's get started. I will share my screen. Okay, there we go. So thank you so much for being here to DeFi 101, how to be your own bank. So I'll teach you in this video, this lessons workshop, just pretty much the basics, the beginning steps to understanding decentralized finance, and how you can get started kind of using some of the tools to manage your assets. So we'll talk a little bit about what DeFi is and how we got here, like why was DeFi even created and how does it work? And then I'll move into getting started. So you'll need to have a wallet and where you can go to buy cryptocurrency, and that will vary depending on the type of cryptocurrency that you want to buy, and also where you are in the world. And then we'll move into strategies for using your cryptocurrency to bring you in more money. So we'll talk about passive income, investment strategy, and just how you can think about your assets as you invest. So let's get going. I am Ashley Spradlin. I'm the Education Programs Manager at Metis and at Crypto Chicks. I have a background in public education, nonprofit management, and state and local government. I joined Crypto Chicks and Metis in January of this year. So I've been learning a lot about Web3 and have a lot of experience in education, but the whole DeFi thing was quite new to me. So I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to share those things with you here. Just a little bit of background on Crypto Chicks in case you are new to us. Crypto Chicks is a nonprofit organization on a mission to bring more people into Web3. And we do that with education through our academy and through startup incubation in our hatchery. So we have job placement. We offer support for people who have a business idea and they need help getting it off the ground. And then we offer on-demand courses. Our community is growing and we continue to offer educational resources. In our academy, we have on-demand courses and live webinars, just like this one. We also have an educational podcast that teaches the basics of blockchain and Web3 business development. And then after you get this information, if you want to join our hatchery, then we offer education and incubator support for startup ideas. We can help connect people with investors, development, and potentially help you deploy your idea. So I wanted to introduce Metis just a little bit before we go into the content of the lesson, because a lot of the examples that I give for where you can do some of these DeFi strategies are going to be with platforms that are on the Metis network. So if you're new to blockchain, you may have heard of Ethereum, maybe not. Ethereum is a layer 1 blockchain that is extremely decentralized and secure, and it allows you to build your own economies, your own tokenomic systems onto their network. Whereas Bitcoin is just like a currency that you exchange. Ethereum is a currency, but it also has utility in that other people can build their own applications on top of that network. The problem is it can be really expensive and very slow depending on how many people are using the network at any given time. So Metis is what we call a layer 2 solution, which essentially means they are they use technology that bundles up transactions and passes them through to Ethereum as one. So it kind of allows people to like hop in the carpool lane and split up their transaction costs, making everything a lot cheaper and a lot faster. So it really increases the scalability of a business on the blockchain. And so I'm going to use a lot of their projects because Metis is a great network to use some of these DeFi strategies on, because they have the cheapest transaction fees of any layer 2 network, but they inherit the security and decentralization strengths of Ethereum. Just a quick disclaimer before we get very far into this. There is no financial or legal advice in this presentation. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I'm not trying to tell you what to buy or anything of that nature. I'm not a tax professional or a lawyer or a financial advisor. I'm just an educator trying to give you information so that you can make informed decisions for yourself. So, DeFi, how did we get here? In the crypto world, people will often call traditional finance TradFi or TradFi. And that's just kind of short for traditional finance. And then DeFi is decentralized finance. So I think it's important to kind of consider how we got to decentralized finance, because that is kind of the underlying foundation for why you would even want to participate in it. Why would anybody want to be their own bank? And really the answer to that is autonomy, freedom. We want some sovereignty in the way that we manage our assets and a say in the way our data is used. So if we think about the way that really currency kind of got its start in the United States specifically, fiat currency was developed as a store of value, so we didn't have to barter. Early economies were based off of a bartering system. You've got a couple of goats. Well, I've got a few chickens. Let's trade. And eventually that kind of moved into other mediums of exchange. Gold was something that people would use to kind of exchange and store value, but it became heavy and cumbersome. Eventually, fiat currency was developed as a store of value that's backed by the US government. And that's kind of a long story in the progression of the gold standard and how currency came about. But essentially, in most governments, there is a central banking authority that governs the circulation of fiat currency. In the United States, that authority is called the Federal Reserve. Some people just call it the Fed. And essentially, the Fed is the central bank that governs all banks. And the board that kind of runs the Federal Reserve is made up of only 7 people. And that's important because the Federal Reserve is responsible for monitoring the circulation of currency and controlling the interest rates. So if they want to pump out more currency, or they want to print more money, that devalues the dollar that you have. And if you don't quite understand why, I think there's some psychology behind like scarcity and abundance there that comes into play. But if we're talking about the laws of supply and demand, if there are $100 in circulation and you own one of them, well, you own 1% of the money, right? But if there are $1,000 in circulation and you own one of them, well, you own 0.1%. So your the value of what you hold has decreased. So that's kind of the mentality behind developing a system that is not controlled by a small group of people, or at least is not clear and transparent from the get-go. We don't necessarily have a say in how the Fed governs the circulation of money. And we also don't know if they are managing the data securely and safely. The Fed has been hacked over 50 times within my lifetime. And so people have decided that there need to be other forms of currency that are not controlled by just a few people, that make financial services like borrowing and lending available to anybody in the world. Your credit score, for example, can determine your ability to buy a home or even rent an apartment. And when those things are controlled by small groups of people, there's some inherent discrepancy in equity. There's some inequitable pieces to that. So cryptocurrency was developed for a peer-to-peer exchange network. And so that people can kind of create their own economy. And the control of each of the cryptocurrencies that we're going to kind of focus on today is decentralized, meaning that anyone who participates in contributing to the security of those cryptocurrency networks, they own a piece of it, but nobody owns it in its entirety. So the ledger, you might think of it as like a notebook of transactions. You sent this money to this person, and then this money sent that person to that person, and it keeps track of your balances as you go. That is held on one device and every device in a blockchain network. So it makes the record keeping very secure. And then we kind of moved, this has kind of evolved. Bitcoin was the first to develop as a widely adopted peer-to-peer exchange. And Ethereum has become the next evolution in cryptocurrency, as not only does it have a currency aspect to it where people can exchange it, it's a network on which people can build their own token economies. So like I was saying, you can build your own web application and launch it on the Ethereum network and have it be decentralized. You can create your own token and design tokenomics, which is like economics and token put together, to govern your system. So that means if you want to create a token that is extremely scarce, then it can be very valuable. If you want to create an incredibly inclusive community, then you can have different mechanisms for when you release tokens, or if you burn them to kind of help adjust to the pricing. So all of these things are possible, and different organizations do it different ways. But the beauty is that the users have a say in how it's done. So that's kind of how we arrived to DeFi, but let's get into a little bit more about what the differences are really for the user in traditional finance versus decentralized finance. So I like to use this restaurant analogy. Traditional finance is kind of like a traditional restaurant. In traditional finance, you go to a bank and someone manages your funds for you. They give you access to specific services depending on your eligibility. You pay the bank fees for those services, and they manage your assets for you. The benefit of this is if you see a fishy transaction on your account, or you lose access to your online platform, somebody is there you can call and say, hey, I'm locked out of my account, or hey, this looks like I didn't spend this money. What's going on? And there's someone, a customer service representative, to support you in that. So like a traditional restaurant, you make reservations, you request access to these services. You have to wait to be seated. You wait for someone to bring these things to you. And you are offered like a very specific menu based on your credit score, on a number of things. There are plenty of discriminatory lending practices that have been published. So there are a lot of different things that can impact what is available to you. You can wait for your order to arrive. So typically, if I want to send money to someone across the world, that may take a few days, depending on the banking system that we use, and then the relationships between the two countries that we're in. So there's socioeconomic and political barriers that kind of impact the traditional finance world. And then you pay for those services. And usually these fees can be really high. I know, for instance, I lived in a country in Asia when I was in college teaching English. And for me to be able to send some of my paycheck to my American bank account to pay some of my bills here, it would usually cost me like $75 to get it done in a timely manner. And so that's kind of the traditional restaurant piece. Now, DeFi is a little more like a buffet. In a buffet, you walk in, you choose your seat, it's self-serve, you take your plate to the buffet, you pick whatever you want off, and then you pay for what you've eaten, but it's a little cheaper, right? Because you're not paying for a service, you're not paying for someone to come and wait on you, there's no tipping necessarily. And now this is obviously like a little bit of a reductionist. I'm sure you could find some buffets where there are some exceptions to these rules, but generally, DeFi means that you're serving yourself. There are no intermediaries that say you do or don't have access to certain financial instruments. There's no one saying that, well, because you are from this country, I'm not allowing you to access this cryptocurrency. And if you are, a 14-year-old girl in Bangladesh or a 52-year-old man in the Silicon Valley, it doesn't really matter. You all can have access to the signed financial services and decentralized finance. And because you are the keeper of your funds, there's some disadvantages and advantages. Number one is for disadvantages is, well, you're the keeper of your funds. So if you lose your private key, which we'll get to in a second, if you make an error in sending your money, if you make some sort of mistake, there's really no fixing it. It's all on you. And there's nobody to call for help. Now, the advantage of that is it's you, like you're the one making it. So if you have the information to make informed decisions for yourself, then you could potentially invest and grow your assets and keep them safe without having to pay those extra fees, without having the socioeconomic or geopolitical barriers that impact your transactions. And typically, this also means things can happen almost instantly, depending on the network you use. If I wanted to send money to somebody across the world, it could happen in moments. So there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to both. But I think when you think of sovereignty, freedom, and then scalability, DeFi has the winner there. So we're going to go into some wallets now. And normally I would ask people to share a little bit more, but I think most of our audience is on live stream today. So this is mostly going to be me talking. However, if you have any questions and you're in the Zoom room, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'm happy to answer them as I go. And if anything comes up that you just want to share, or if it's a related question, please do come off mute or put it in the chat. I want to hear from you. We actually learn a lot more when we're able to teach one another. And then beyond that, on our Twitter or social media, you're so welcome to send us questions and messages, and we can give you some answers there. Okay, so crypto wallets. So let's say you're sold. You decide, yep, I'm ready to eat from this DeFi buffet. I want to be my own bank. So the first thing you're going to need to do is get a crypto wallet. Now, there are a few different kinds of wallets out there. You can get a program, like a software program on your computer, like if you see this MetaMask example here. This is like a software wallet that you can download as a plugin to your browser, and you can just connect to it there with a password login. Or you can have a hardware device like this Ledger device you see here that installs into your computer. Both are connected to the blockchain. The hardware wallets are typically more secure. They're what we call cold wallet storage, meaning unless you're actually connecting it to the internet to use it, then it's offline. It can't be hacked. It's secure and safe as long as you keep the actual device safe and no one has your private key to log into it. The hot wallets are the software wallets, the ones that don't require a piece of equipment. You just log in online. They're secure. However, they're still susceptible to cyber attack because you can still log into these just with a username and password. So these are slightly less secure, but more convenient. Anytime you want to make a trade or a transaction, however, you have to connect your wallet to the internet. So I would advise, after you kind of get your feet wet and learn a little bit more, to invest in a hardware wallet because it's just the safest bet for keeping your funds safe. So anytime you set up a wallet, you're going to create an account for yourself, and it will generate a private key for you. Your private key is like your password. It's like 12 to 24 words, depending on which wallet you use. Sometimes people will develop their own private keys, and they'll try to use words and phrases that they'll easily remember. But this is risky because if you don't have your private keys, or if somebody else has your private keys, they can take all of your crypto. There's a saying in crypto, not your keys, not your crypto. So if somebody else has them, then you're not complete ownership of them, and they're susceptible to taking all of your money. So a private key is extremely important to keep secure. I recommend writing it down physically on a couple of pieces of paper, storing them securely and separately, so that you always have those locked away. So, and then you also get kind of an account number. And another way of thinking about this would be like your public address, your wallet address, or your public key. These are synonymous terms. Essentially, it's a pretty long string of letters and numbers that represent like your physical address. So this is what you would give to people if they were going to send you some cryptocurrency. This is also how people can look up your wallet activity on a public blockchain. So that's something to consider, because any transactions that you do they're on a public blockchain. Remember when I discussed, let me back up really quickly. Remember I discussed that in traditional finance, they keep these ledgers for you in-house. Well, in DeFi, these ledgers are on a public blockchain. So everyone can see these transactions. They may not necessarily see like who you are, but they'll see your wallet address and, you know, where you sent money or who sent money to you, how much, and they can see the different smart contracts that you interact with. There are certain cryptocurrencies and services out there that offer a little bit more privacy to this effect. But the ledger is public and decentralized, meaning it's stored on many different devices. So when you consider that, just think about, you know, what activity you would want to be public with each different wallet that you use. Some people set up multiple wallets for different purposes. So your private key is something that you should never, ever, ever, ever share with anybody. Your public key, your wallet address, absolutely you can share that. But your private key, absolutely not. If somebody takes that, I mean, that's really all they need to get all your funds. There are two different kinds of wallets, really. There are custodial and non-custodial wallets. A non-custodial wallet is you having your private key. So you're the only person who has it. That would be like having a ledger, one of these hardware wallets, or using a service like MetaMask. But there are also custodial wallets. If you're new to crypto and you've joined on something like Coinbase, Coinbase has a custodial wallet service, which means they are the keeper of your private keys. You just log into an app on your phone and you can do the transactions. You can buy, sell, trade cryptocurrency there, but you don't actually see your private key. Coinbase is responsible for it. Now, again, benefits are you get locked out of your app. Coinbase can help you get logged back in. But if there's some issue with Coinbase, or if their leadership decides they wanted to take your money, like there's nothing that you could really do to stop that. So you would really, if you're going to use a custodial wallet service, which many people do when they're just getting started, you really want to choose a reputable source, someone that has a long-standing reputation of solid security. And eventually, as you get more comfortable, you might consider moving to a non-custodial wallet where you're the keeper of your keys. Okay, so you've got your wallet. Now, you need to buy some cryptocurrency. What do? You have to start with a centralized exchange. So just like you would buy stocks in an exchange like Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or something like that, cryptocurrencies have centralized exchanges that are controlled by, you know, a company or a small group of people. And the reason that you have to start with a centralized exchange is because they offer fiat currency on and off ramp, which means they're the way that you can change your US dollars, your Canadian dollars, your physical money into cryptocurrency. You deposit those dollars onto the exchange, and then you use them to buy or cash out for whatever you'd like. Now, the reason that only centralized exchanges can be like your entry point is because they have what's known as, actually, I think it's on my next slide here. Yeah, they're regulated and insured because they have to follow know your customer and anti-money laundering laws. So in the crypto space, you might hear this termed as KYC or AML, but essentially anytime that people are buying what's termed a security, interacting with their money in a space like this, it has to be regulated. So they're insured and they can offer customer support, but you do have to provide self-identifying information in order to create an account here. So for Coinbase, for example, you sign up for an account. You often have to like upload a photo ID. Sometimes they do a phone call to like a video call to check your identity. I don't think they do that every time, but there are a lot of ways for them to confirm your identity and just make sure that they know who you are and then connect to your bank account so that you can then start to buy cryptocurrency on their platform. These are pretty user-friendly, and they're a great place to start when you're just getting into it, but they usually have higher fees. So I'll show you here. This is an example, a screenshot that I took a while ago. Unfortunately, in our market right now, these prices are not accurate. However, I just wanted to show you the fee here. So if you look at this Coinbase fee, if I were to buy a little bit of Ethereum, it would cost me this extra $7.34 for my purchase. So that's just a little bit less ETH than I would get in return for my funds. So from there, you can, buy whatever coins are supported by their specific exchange. Not all cryptocurrencies are supported by centralized exchanges. So depending on the asset that you want to purchase, that will determine which exchange you want to use. Not all transactions occur on a blockchain when you use one of these centralized exchanges. So that means that there's a little bit less security and transparency, and they're not decentralized, meaning they're not owned and controlled by their users. However, once you start in a centralized exchange and maybe you get a little bit more comfortable with how it works, you can start moving into decentralized exchanges. So in a decentralized exchange, you hold your wallets and your own assets, and you have to have cryptocurrency already to get into these. So they don't have a US dollar to Bitcoin trade there. You have to already purchase cryptocurrency in a centralized exchange and then use that to buy other cryptocurrencies or do whatever transactions you'd like on their platform. So whereas in a centralized exchange, it's kind of like, if you think about like the stock market order book model, when people want to buy and sell stocks, let's say I've got stocks and I want to sell them for $50. Well, I've got to wait until a buyer comes onto the market and is willing to pay $50. And then the intermediary is going to make that connection for us and facilitate that transaction for a fee. In decentralized exchanges or DeFi in general, you don't interact with an intermediary or a person who facilitates these exchanges. You interact with what's called a smart contract, which is essentially just computer code that automatically fulfills these conditions automatically fulfills these requests when conditions are met. It's like an if-then statement for computers. So typically assets are put in a pool. And let's say you want to buy some. Well, the smart contract will say, you've got enough money, so here are your tokens, and it happens without any human needing to intervene in that transaction. These things occur on a blockchain, so they're secure, transparent, and decentralized. Usually the fees are much, much cheaper, and it can happen much more quickly. The issue is they're unregulated. So if you make a mistake, and this is really for all exchanges and cryptocurrency transactions. If you type in your public address wrong and try to send money to somebody and you've messed up the address, that money is lost forever. There's no way to get it back. And if someone, tries to send some money to you and you accidentally send them the wrong thing or they input the wrong amount, there's no way for you to get that money back. It's just kind of lost into the ether. So it's super, super, super important that you double, triple, quadruple check that you're inputting the appropriate information when you send your transactions. Here's some examples of decentralized exchanges. So MetaMask has kind of this effect. They use what's called an Oracle service, which kind of checks what the price of different assets are across multiple exchanges, and then it aggregates them, and you can do some exchanges right in your wallet platform. So this again was like an older screenshot that I took the last time I taught this workshop. So these prices aren't accurate today, but I could just at one time trade my Metis token for USDC directly from my wallet, and then I would pay a gas fee. Now, a gas fee is not necessarily a fee that goes to the organization. This is a fee that is paid to the users who are interacting or who are working to validate the network. So sometimes this is really expensive. If there are a lot of people using the network, then people will have to pay more to process their transaction. And you can opt to pay even more gas fees if you want to prioritize your transaction so it'll go through more quickly. On other networks like Metis, for example, a swap like this would cost, a few cents. So the network that you use can really be a determining factor in the amount of money that you pay to initiate a transaction. But you'll notice here that I took these at the same time on the same day. So in my MetaMask, it takes exchange rates from several centralized exchanges, and one Metis only got me about 81.50 worth of USDC. And over on NetSwap, which is a decentralized exchange, I was able to get a few more dollars for one token. So that is just kind of indicative of how you might be able to save a little more if you use a cheaper network and you use a decentralized exchange. So yeah, I think I covered all of those points. Does anyone have any questions so far? Cool. Feel free to pop them in if anything changes there. So let's say you've bought your cryptocurrency. You have your wallet set up. You've stored your private keys well. You know that when you make a transaction, you want to double, quadruple check that you've put in the correct public address to make sure that that money is getting where you intend it to go. You've hopped onto a centralized exchange. You connected it to your bank account so you could buy your cryptocurrency. And then you decided you wanted to bridge it over to another network and use a decentralized exchange to buy some of the lesser known tokens. Or you just wanted to buy some well-known tokens, but for a cheaper exchange rate. So now, what are you going to do with these assets? You have these assets. What do you do with them? There are a few things that you can do. One is hold them. So in crypto, they like to kind of make new words, new jargon for everyday terms. So you might hear it called HODL. Essentially, it means hold. So you just buy and keep those cryptocurrencies. Use this strategy if you feel like the value of your asset is going to increase. The numbers are going to go up one day. So I'm just going to hold on to this now and I'll save it to sell for a rainy day. Or I'll hold it because I think in the long term, the price is going to go way up and this will be way more valuable in the future. So this is a good strategy if you think something has long-term growth potential. One thing I will mention is if you plan to hold on to your assets, keep them in your wallet. When you purchase something on an exchange, it lives in your exchange account. In order to keep it secure, you need to send it then to your wallet. So you have like an exchange address, and then you'll have your wallet address. So you want to send it to your private wallet so that you can keep it safe. Another thing you can do is actively trade. Now, this is probably one of the riskier strategies out there because it requires a lot of research, a lot of understanding the market, maybe having like your finger on the pulse of market sentiment. You might even need a bit of a crystal ball to predict what's going to happen in the market. But there are people out there who will buy and sell in a short turnaround in hopes of earning a profit. And this is awesome because some people have banked. You can really grow your wealth exponentially. But for every one person who does that, there are probably 10 more who lose a whole lot of money. So this is a little risky. It requires a good amount of experience and kind of understanding what to look for in the different assets that you're trading. However, this is one strategy that does earn people some return on their investment. So some places that you can do this on the Metis network are NetSwap, Standard Protocol, or Teddy's Finance. And I've included a little bit.ly link here. This goes to, if you type this into your web browser, it'll take you to an article that has kind of a breakdown of a lot of the different DeFi protocols that are on Metis. So if you go to any of those, you'll be able to interact with their platforms and trade, or whatever you're looking to do. Here's an example of some crypto exchanges on the Metis network. We've got Teddy's Finance here and NetSwap. So these are just like test kind of things. These prices are not incredibly accurate. It's just an example to show you some different opportunities for trading on the Metis network. If you'll look at Teddy's Finance, you can, if you're confused about what it means here, wrapped ETH. When you're not on the main Ethereum network, you can still exchange Ethereum tokens, Ether, but they wrap them, which is a process of just converting the language of that token to another network's language. Basically, blockchains speak different languages and they don't always follow the same rules. So you have to wrap the assets sometimes and take them from one to the other, but they're meant to still preserve the same attributes and value. So with wrapped Ethereum, you could trade here, and the exchange rate is pretty close here. But I did want you to notice that if you look down to price impact refers to the amount that the value of the asset might change from the time that you select the transaction to the time the transaction actually goes through. So the price is always changing, and you're subject to that little time gap could change potentially how much you get in return, depending on whether or not the price has moved since you started looking at making that transaction go through. All right, staking. So there are a couple of mechanisms. Well, there are many mechanisms for consensus in blockchain. Essentially, because blockchain is decentralized, that means that every person who contributes to that network, who runs what's called a node, they have to agree that any transaction that is recorded on the blockchain is accurate and is done with integrity. And in order to do that, there are some mechanisms to provide consensus, to get a majority of people who are running that network to say, yep, this one is good to go. So there's one called proof of stake. And essentially what that means is I need to put some stake. I need to stake my own assets to say that I'm doing my best to secure the network. I'm going to do it with integrity. So essentially, if I'm looking through and I'm validating transactions on the network and I see something that looks fishy, I have to report that, and then it has to be proven to see, whether or not it was an accurate transaction or if it was malicious activity. If I choose to take advantage of that and try to manipulate the system, then the funds that I put up as staking funds are slashed and taken away from me. So this is kind of the method of putting some skin in the game to ensure that the people who are securing the network are acting with integrity. Now, usually they have to make the staking amount really high because, how much money would it take to convince you to act with integrity? Well, you have to have a lot there to disincentivize some malicious behavior. However, that's kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of people. So there are platforms that you can put a smaller amount of funds into a pool with other people, and that money will generate passive interest for you, some passive income. So those funds will be locked. They can be locked for a long time, or sometimes they have a flexible withdrawal option. You can take them out at any time, but ultimately you put them in and they earn token rewards, essentially interest, for the amount that you've contributed to securing the network. On Metis, you can stake different kinds of tokens depending on the platform. Tethys Finance and Hermes both have options for that. We also have Metis staking options coming in the future. But to stake here, you'll notice like if I put in a certain amount, then I might earn 29% APR. Now, this seems really high. If you are interested in traditional finance, then you know that a high yield savings account might bring you like, what, 4% in return over, every year. It's important to remember that your rewards are coming in the form, the interest that you're getting is coming in the form of the token of that network. So if the APR is at 29%, that's really exciting, but the value of that token has to remain pretty stable, or you hope it goes up. If it goes way down, well, you're earning interest, but the value of that interest is not worth anything. So there is some risk involved. Farming. So farming is kind of like next level. Once you understand staking and you have a pretty solid understanding of the network and the projects that you are investing in, you can kind of dabble into farming. So essentially farming is providing liquidity for exchanges or transactions on a platform, and then using the rewards that you get for that to then stake or do other DeFi things on the platform or on other platforms in DeFi. So let's say, remember when I told you that in DeFi, you're interacting with a smart contract. There's a pool of funds that you say you're going to buy from. That is kind of the basis for farming. This is called liquidity provision. So essentially, you say, I want to provide money to this pool so that other people can buy, sell, trade. So you have to put up an equal amount of two assets into a pool. And then you'll generate rewards in the form of those tokens back to you. And then you can use those tokens to, borrow and lend or stake or trade. And then that is what you use. That's what you do with, that's called yield farming. So essentially you take the rewards that you get from providing liquidity, and then you try to make more money with those rewards. And this can get a little complicated if you don't necessarily understand the different platforms that you're using. And I want to show you one on the Metis network that makes it very clear. DeFi Finance offers what's called a yield optimizer. So essentially it has, this is just a short screenshot of it, but it has a whole list of all the different pairs, liquidity pairs that are being offered. And you can see the chain that it's being offered on, the pair. So you would, if you wanted to join this liquidity pool, you would submit some DAI and Metis to the pool. And then you can do this on the Tethys network. It'll give you your interest rates and, kind of like a score of safety there. So this is a great resource for kind of seeing what all the different options are. And Beefy, I think, is on multiple networks. So if you're looking at other networks, that's also possible. Borrowing and lending. So this is another possibility in DeFi, and it works really similar to traditional finance. So in traditional finance, if you want to, take out a loan, you go to a bank. Typically, they want to run your credit, look at your income, look at your debt, and then you borrow money and you pay them back with interest. And that interest is their fee for lending you this money. Now in DeFi, this is on peer-to-peer platforms. So instead of going to a bank, if I have collateral, if I have enough collateral to say, if I don't pay this back, you can take all of my collateral, then you can participate in these borrowing and lending platforms. You can borrow from another person in crypto without having to provide some sort of credit or anything of that nature. You can do it anonymously and in a peer-to-peer manner. So the lenders earn interest provided for providing those loans, and the borrowers, they can take that money and then invest it or do something else with it as long as they pay it back with the interest that they're getting. We are working on some under collateralized loan solutions for DeFi, because if you want to borrow but you don't already have assets to provide as collateral, then you're going to be barred from being able to do that. So there is some barrier to entry if you don't already have assets that you can provide as collateral, but people are working to create mechanisms that would allow people to be able to borrow without necessarily needing to be over collateralized. One of the platforms on the Metis network that's working on that right now is called TenderFi. Their user interface is super simple. So essentially you can supply, you can borrow, it shows your APY. It's quite easy to use. Now there are a lot of risks involved, and I'm just going to kind of hit a few of the highlights here. And the next workshop that I do in a couple of weeks will be a little more in depth on the risks involved with these different DeFi strategies. But essentially the interest rates can change. They offer these like big juicy APYs, but they're, again, it's not like you're getting that in cash. This is in the token or some sort of token reward that you're getting in return. And if the value of that token changes, well, then so does the interest that you're receiving. Sometimes these platforms don't have enough liquidity, which makes the price impact high. So the price can change in a liquidity pool if there's not enough available on a platform. So if not enough people have provided funds to that smart contract for people to interact with, then the price of the assets in that pool is going to change dramatically. It just makes it a poor trading experience. Scams and fraud, smart contract vulnerabilities are real. So a lot of projects, they offer great things and they are on a decentralized blockchain, but somebody who understands smart contract code really well may be able to look at it and find where the vulnerabilities are and drain a pool's funds or what have you. So this does happen, in which case some platforms do a really great job of trying to reimburse or support the people who were on the network that lost money. Others say, sorry, we lost. There's no way for us to give it back to you. So that is a risk. Centralization. If it's a project that is controlled by just a single group of people, one or a few, then there's a single point of failure. And if just one of those people or two of those people have access to changing the smart code or have access to the pools on their platform, then what's to stop them from taking all the money and running, especially in a space where anonymity and privacy are held so sacred. So some things that you can do to make sure that you are investing your money wisely would be to do some due diligence. Communicate with projects. There are a lot of projects that have really strong reputations that have made it through a couple of market cycles, that have strong security audits, that stay really engaged with their communities. Read their documentation, ask their questions. And honestly, it will probably serve you well to focus more on long-term growth than trying to make these like instant turnarounds. Not to say that it's not possible, but if you invest a whole lot of your money into trying to do that, you're likely to lose a lot of it as well. So be mindful about the way that you're interacting with the different protocols, and just feel like, you know, if I don't understand something that I read in the documentation, I don't know how this works, connect with the project, talk with their community. And if you're not really getting any feedback, if nobody's answering your questions or trying to help you figure things out, that's probably a red flag. I will go into this in greater detail and talk a lot more in the DeFi risks workshop that I'm going to offer on July 14th. So this one will be another free workshop, and essentially I'll just go through the different DeFi strategies, and I'll talk more in depth about liquidity pools and how you can lose money in permanent loss, things of that nature. They're pretty complex topics, so it takes a little longer to explain. But I also wanted to share with you that we do have a couple of podcasts. The Weekly Wisdom is something that just kind of explores the different projects on the Metis network. And Crypto Chicks Corner is a podcast that is like 10-minute episodes. They're very short listens, and they just go over the basics of blockchain. So if you are super new, start there. Start at the very beginning, and then it kind of moves into more talking about liquidity pools and impermanent loss and risks. So there's a lot to learn just from those two resources that you can listen to at any time. And I think that might be all. Let me get after this workshop. Oh, our Women in Crypto, one of our sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting the education work that we do. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to listen now. I'll go over and check on the live stream comments. If anyone in the Zoom room has any questions, I am here for you. We have a few minutes before we need to close out for today. Okay, nice. I see a couple of people are on, but no questions, so that's good. There's a little bit of a delay. Awesome. Oh, good. I'm glad you found it informative. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And yeah, I guess that's it. I really appreciate your attention. I know that in these webinars, it's a lot of just me talking at you. There's not a lot of interaction, especially when not everybody is in the Zoom room. I can't get everybody to participate with me. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to do that. If you want a specific podcast episode on a certain topic, let us know and we want to help out. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And that's all for today. Have a great one.